This is the We Built This Business podcast. I'm your host, Daniel O'Sullivan. This is the podcast for UK business owners to share their journey, their knowledge, their sacrifices, and their successes. Today, I'm pleased to have Mark Hayward on the We Built This Business podcast, talking about the podcast Introduction Group and his show, Business Growth Talks. Mark, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm really looking forward to having a good conversation with you.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really interested in the introduction group that you have, because podcast guesting for me is something that has kind of come into my world in the last 6 months, and it's definitely been a challenge. So I'm interested to know how you got into that and everything to do with the podcast side of things.
Yeah, sure.
First of all, Mark, could you tell us in more detail, what is the podcast Introduction Group all about?
So Podcast Introduction is a company that I set up with one of my guests on my show. And this is one of the things that we talk about when we're talking to clients and prospective clients is me and George are living proof that podcast guesting can generate business, and you can collaborate and you can start businesses. So what it is we work with our clients, mostly business owners, entrepreneurs and authors, and we work with them to be able to get them on the best shows that we can get them on. So we have access to all podcasts globally. And what we do is we do an outreach service where we reach out to podcasts and we say, we've got Daniel, he's going to be a great guest because of this experience and that experience. And then we do a full turnkey solution. We then work it out and we make the arrangements and get people on the shows. And the reasons why people do it is because they want to build their brand, whether it's a professional or a personal brand. And they want, in most cases, they want to be able to soft sell. They want to be able to sell their product or service. But we do work with corporates as well. So they're a different beast. They're looking just for branding, just to make sure they're always in the media in different ways. But yeah, it's a great way of business owners being able to use podcast guesting as a marketing strategy.
Fantastic. So the people that are looking to build their own personal brand, do they tend to be, like CEOs, MDs? What kind of ranges of the people are you putting on shows?
So people that are looking for brand building, especially a personal brand, they've often grown a business or multiple businesses and maybe exited or maybe got to the point where they're just a board member and they're looking to give something back. And they want to be able to go to an audience and explain how they grew their business, what key milestones did they have, what was their mindset, or maybe a shift in mindset, or a part of their journey of how they got there. So the people that are looking to build their brand, personal brand, anyway, it's that storytelling and journey of how they got to where they are, and they want to give back and be able to do that through podcast guesting.
Sounds fantastic. Yeah, it's a completely massive area that I've not really looked into too much until, like I said, the last 6 months, and it seems to be a real hot area that people are, moving into now. We'll get more into that later, Mark, but I just wanted to find out, so the size of the business that you are at the moment, what sort of revenue are you? How many employees do you have? Where are you located?
So we're actually remotely working. There's myself and a couple of employees who do the delivery side, who look after our clients. And then we've got a couple of salespeople that are helping us, that are just full-time doing sales and building the business there. It's a growing business. We actually just recently changed a marketing strategy, which has done really well for us. I have to be honest. I know the number. I look at the numbers. Can I recall them? No, I can't. We are, but I know we're growing year on year. This year, even in June, we have been incredibly fast-paced growth on that, and that's being able to work with our clients, but get renewals. That was something that we've worked quite hard on, is making sure that we can renew people for future shows and future contracts, because that's a great way of being able to keep on selling and you've already struck up a relationship. But there's a real mix. Some people do it as an experiment and they just want to see, do they enjoy doing it? Some people are looking to have specific marketing goals that they want to set in place to be able to get from guesting. So yeah, it's a growing business. It's a growing area. And so we feel we're well positioned with our experience. I've done nearly 500 shows, probably 50 guesting episodes. My business partner, George, he did an exercise of 60 shows in 1 year that he did with his team. So we are very well placed to be able to help our clients get on the best shows and also help them get the most out of their experience.
Amazing. Well, we'll get into that in further later on, but I just wanted to take me back, Mark, to leaving school and moving into your first position in a job. How did that then transition into you starting your company? If you could take me right back.
Right, so left school at 18 with some decent A-levels, went and did a degree in politics. Not really sure why I did politics, but political science is what I sort of worked in. At the end of it, wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. So I ended up getting contracts working for central government, so Cabinet Office and Home Office, Department of Justice. I did about 3 or 4 contracts. Within that interwoven, I went travelling for about 9 months in Southeast Asia. And but the archetypal, like, not sure what I want to do. Let's just do some work, get some skills, get some understanding, get some money in, spend it all going traveling, which was a great experience. I don't regret doing it for a minute. But once I got back, I kind of thought, do you know what? I do need to think about something a little bit more seriously.
What year did you go traveling?
Probably 2002, 2003, something like that. I was about 23 years old.
And so you got back from there, and then you started moving into a career. Is that what happened?
Well, yeah. So actually, there's an interim period where I should really give a footnote to. I actually went and interned for political campaigning organisations to do with PR, so like public affairs. In essence, they don't use the word, but it's lobbying. Let's call a spade a spade. It is lobbying, but no one likes to use that word in this country. And the reason why it's a footnote, I only really did it for about 9-10 months, was I met my girlfriend that turned into a wife. So I should really mention that because it was a very pivotal moment in my life. But I came at the end of that internship. I did 2 internships. No jobs came from it, and I was just a little bit fed up with the whole political experience. It wasn't fulfilling me as jobs. It wasn't necessarily fulfilling me as a mission or a purpose that I had. So my dad had worked for corporate for an insurance company for many, many years, and we worked on the idea that, well, a corporate job is a good starting point. That's what I'll look to get into. So 2006, I think it was, joined PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and actually stuck with them for about 12 years, I think. So and I did some sort of admin roles, and then got in as a consultant, transferred into being a consultant. And that meant that I was working with developers building tax software. So software for corporates to deal with their taxes when they were dealing with people that were traveling overseas. They called it global mobility. So I worked there for a number of years, really enjoyed my experience there. It was great working with a bunch of developers, building something different, something new, working with new clients, building up a client base, working across borders. I very much enjoyed most of the experience there, and then made a shift and went into KPMG. And fast forward to COVID, I owned a couple of properties myself, so I did have an income. So I decided in 2020 it's turned out to be a great decision, but I ended up leaving and doing my own thing in 2020, and been very happy with that choice.
How did you get to that decision?
um, a little bit of stupidity, a little bit of naivety, a lot of research as well. I sort of play it down, but I started my personal development journey, sort of starting with Tony Robbins. I think everyone starts with Tony Robbins, or goes through a Tony Robbins stage. And I started creating, there wasn't a word for it, but I kind of felt I was kind of an entrepreneur. So I worked in a company, but I was trying to be entrepreneurial while I was doing it. And that differentiated me in the company. But I came to the point where, with that journey of reading and listening to podcasts, listening to audiobooks on personal development, entrepreneurship, starting your own business, building businesses, I could see it was very appealing to try and do those sorts of things rather than having the constraints of a corporate job. You can't really pivot. You can't really change very quickly. There's a lot of buy-in you need to get from other people to be able to make good decisions, even though you know it's a good decision. So I wanted the flexibility. I wanted flexibility in the lifestyle as well. I was working a lot of hours, not really seeing my kids. And so that decision was something that I made. And it was the best decision that I made, but it was very much thought through, trying to mitigate risks. I had a runway. I don't know what book it was that said about a runway. I had money in the bank that if it all went wrong, I didn't have to quit and go back into a job. So, but yeah, it was the best decision for me personally. Flexibility work. I still work bloody hard, but just having that flexibility and availability for the kids and my wife, and it has been incredibly rewarding and definitely the right decision to make.
Amazing. It's that almost just do it moment. So at what point from handing in notice to starting the podcast introduction group, what was the period?
Oh, okay. So let me just fill in a bit details before we get into the podcast introduction. I've got my own show called Business Growth Talks that I started when I was in corporate, and they didn't really like me doing it, but I ticked all the boxes. I made sure I didn't talk about specifics, case studies to do with the business, but I was talking more about generic businesses. So I started that 6.5 years ago. About 18 months in, I started doing interviews. And really enjoyed them, and you'll know, Daniel, it's an incredibly interesting, curious job that you have to do, that you're thinking about other people, how you can make them shine on the show, how you can ask interesting questions. So started doing that, and then probably into year 3 or 4, I met George McGarren, who's my business partner, and he was on my show, and we got on really well. And I don't always ask people for a second interview, but I did ask him for a second interview. I thought it'd be interesting to delve into other things, and we just stayed in contact. We just stayed in sort of couple of emails with a catch-up call, and then I left corporate, and I had some properties, and I was doing some properties, sourcing properties for other people. And I did a bit of coaching as well. And it was really just finding my feet. And then, as I say, about 3.5 years ago, George said to me, I've got this business idea. I have no idea how to implement it, how to execute it. You've been doing podcasts for a long time. What do you know about it? And I knew the business model. I was working with agencies. I was working with these guesting agencies. And we set up the business. So it was probably about a year after I left corporate that we started the business. I think that's the numbers are right. And so it just was me and George. We were just working out a plan on how to win clients, how to market, how to sell, how to then deliver to the clients. And as I say, it's been an incredibly rewarding experience. I enjoy working with our clients immensely, and it's just been a very rewarding and enjoyable experience. Working with George, and equally doing the the business that we're doing.
This podcast is sponsored by Team Building Experiences. If you're planning a team building event, away day, or corporate event, then check out team-building-experiences.co.uk and state podcast 15 in the comments to receive 15% off your proposal. So I'm just thinking about the years here. So it was 2020, was it, that you left PwC? And then
it's actually KPMG. I moved from PwC to KPMG, but yes.
And then, so the plan, you said you did some coaching, you also had properties. Was it property coaching you were doing? Was that what you left to do?
No, so it was coaching businesses, starting businesses, growing businesses. It was very much startup driven. And I worked out a package and I worked out a curriculum and was working with people. I was also doing a little bit of helping people start their podcasts as well. But the property side of it was I did some education with a company on how to source properties for investors. So finding great deals and then sharing with them investors. So I did that for probably 2.5 years, or maybe like 3+ years of leaving, and I was doing it really intensely until probably about a year ago, where the podcast business started needing a lot more of my time and a lot more of my effort to get it really motoring. So no, it was working with investors, finding properties for them, helping them negotiate and get those properties, and then taking a fee. It's called deal packaging. It's sometimes called property sourcing. But yeah, we were packaging deals for investors, as well as the coaching, as well as teaching people how to start podcasts. And it was very much, once I left the corporate and starting to do it myself, it was like there was a few moving parts, and I think that kind of helped me, but equally it sort of slowed down my development. And when the podcast business started to grow, I was like, actually, I need to focus a lot more of my time to make sure we have satisfied clients, doing some sales calls as well, but making sure we've got satisfied clients, that they are enjoying their experience with working with podcast introduction.
So did you always want to be an entrepreneur?
No, I always enjoyed sales. I always enjoyed speaking to people, connecting with people, building relationships. But I'd love to say I was doing lemonade stands at 7 years old and things like that. I'd love to. This is why I think entrepreneurs can be built, as well as there's an innate, that there's just a calling that you have. And some people have that calling very early on, and at 18 or 21, they go, I've just got to start a business. That wasn't how I thought. The family that I had were not entrepreneurial at all. The friends that I had at that time were not entrepreneurial at all. And as I say, I started this journey probably about 2008, 2009, a year or two into my corporate experience, and just really wanted to become more entrepreneurial. I still was nowhere near ready taking that jump to actually start my own businesses, but it was something that I was listening to books, listening to podcasts. I was commuting into London like an hour and 10. I'd listen to a couple of episodes on a podcast. I'd get through a good chunk of books there and back. And then I started working with a mentor who helped me grow as a person, but equally get promoted really, really efficiently in corporate world. And he was an entrepreneur. And he just encouraged me to think differently. And then by the time 2020 came, although we were in COVID and I could have left, I think I was planning to have my notice in February. And then in February, we started getting reports of COVID. And I was like, do you know what? I'm just going to sit tight for a few months, just see how this plans out. But in that stage, I had a couple of coaching clients already. I was already doing a little bit of the property sourcing for other people and buying properties for myself. And it was like, do you know what? This is the worst time to do it in the middle of a pandemic, but I had to do it. I had to at least try. And because Zoom and all these other technologies were there to support more than ever before, I just said, I've got to do it. Got to do it. I told my wife, I just have to at least try. I have to at least try and do it. And I've been very happy with my, like, there isn't work-life balance. It just doesn't exist. But if there was something, I would say I'm very happy. I suppose the best way to describe it is flexibility. I can pick up my kids. I can drop off my kids in the morning. If something's going on, I can go to a play or a sort of a presentation or something. They're doing something, and that is incredibly rewarding to be able to have that part of my normal life now. So I very much appreciate the flexibility it's given me.
Yeah, almost a bit of freedom as well. Did anyone try and talk you out of it?
Yes, my wife.
Interesting. And what
so I'm the dreamer. I'm the dreamer in the relationship. I have these visions of where I want, like there's still places in the world that I want to go to. Obviously, or not obviously, we've got 8 and a 10-year-old, so it's very much geared on making their lives as amazing as we can. But I'm the dreamer. I'm the one going, look, well, if I do this and do that, that's a new revenue stream. And I love my wife dearly, and she's the grounded one that's like, okay, where's the money coming from? Like, and we had a decent life in corporate, like financially, salary wise, and she was just like, but you're giving up another maybe 2 or 3 years, you're then earning X, which would be pretty much life changing sums, and you're giving all of this up for such a huge risk. So yeah, she was definitely on the camp. Okay, try it, but if it doesn't work out, you have to go back and you have to get a corporate job again. And I said yes. So we made that agreement, and it's been a roller coaster in certain times with certain situations and certain things, but it's definitely something I don't regret.
I love that. I mean, it shows the passion and commitment that you had, because when your closest loved one says, "Are you sure?" you have to be very resilient. It's very easy to say, "No, I'm going to stay in that corporate job, and I'm going to continue as we are because it's safe, isn't it? It's the safest option you can have."
It is, but the thing is that there's redundancies. I think all the time I was at PwC, I went through 2 major redundancies, 07, 08 with the financial crisis, with the credit crunch. And then we had another one, I'm not sure when that was, 2004, 5. And a lot of people were made redundant. And therefore, there is stability to an extent. But if they can't afford you or they're going through troubles, companies will fire or will make redundant. Equally, the growth of you don't really get rewarded for helping grow the business. So yes, there is stability, but I think to an extent there's an element of false stability, because as I say, redundancies are made on cyclical. Every sort of 6-7 years, they get rid of some people, and therefore, but I get what you're saying. You get the salary in every month. You know what's coming in, and you can then adjust your lifestyle to it. And I still have friends, people that do it, and they like it. They're happy with what they're doing, and therefore, starting businesses. I say this a lot to other people. Starting business is not for everyone. You've got to be resilient.
Correct, yeah.
As you say, like, I had to be resilient, that my wife was like worried about where the money was going to come, what we were going to do, how we were going to do it, what, like, a certain lifestyle that we'd both enjoyed, that I had to maintain. And so, it did take resilience, it did take strength, but I think we both agree there's been massive rewards for us as a couple, as well as looking after our kids as well.
Yeah, I've got a similar story. I was at HSBC, and I think it was 2008, similar time. We went through redundancies, 2010, then 2012. It was redundancies, and I think it was 2014. In the end, I just took redundancy because it was like every 2 years they were making swathes and swathes of redundancy. But by that time, I'd been working part-time on the business out of work to kind of build up a little bit of reassurance that when I went full-time, I had something at least to go into, similar to yourself, where you're kind of doing bits and bobs. And you just kind of, you make that jump and you go from every month on the 31st or the 25th, whenever it is, getting that salary to suddenly you're on your own now. And that's,
do you know, the one thing,
point.
Daniel, I think is the thing that kind of isn't spoken about as much as it should be about like making that shift, is you need to have savings, a runway, whatever it is, something to bring some money in, because there could be, especially at the start, it can be really tough. It's either struggling to get clients or you're reinvesting everything back into the business because you want to grow it even more. And I kind of get frustrated, like this whole cash is trash that Grant Cardone gives out. And there isn't, I understand why he says it, because inflation kills cash. But you have to have, when things go badly, when things are not working out as well as you had hoped, you need to have some sort of safety net, or you're going to have to go back and do the job. So I think it's something that we, as aspiring entrepreneurs that are hopefully listening to this show, you need to make sure you've got a backstop, that you've got something that you can, that when the months are tough, that you can still pay the bills. And the thing is, like, it's a different story. You start a business at 21 or 18, you can live at home, you can live in the office that you can live in. But when I'm 44 now and I've got a mortgage, a car, a kids, I've got a certain lifestyle that we sort of like we want, and therefore it's a completely different story at doing it in your 40s than your 20s. But still, if you've got to pay your employees on the end of every month, you need that in the bank to be able to keep the lights on. And so having a runway, having a sort of financial stability around you can be incredibly helpful for long-term success.
And I think that's really good advice. And especially anyone looking to set up, it's just having that comfort blanket that, like you said, you can go and get another job if things aren't working out. But if you lose your house because you can't afford to pay the mortgage or you can't afford to pay the rent, then that has far-reaching consequences and puts the stress on absolutely massively. Just a question I haven't asked before, but do you wish you started earlier?
Yes.
Well, is
so
there
I didn't have the confidence. I don't think I had the confidence or the conviction to actually do it. I did a job while I was doing my searching for what sort of job I did. I did a job for a few months, and it was selling. Now, I really enjoyed like talking to people, building relationships, and in my corporate career, it was all about relationship building. But I did a sales job for a couple of months, and I was standing outside in shopping centres and outside supermarkets selling junk, like hair dryers and sort of like toys and things like that. And it was a great experience in the sense of I understood a little bit more about selling and how to build, playing on people's emotions to try and get them to buy. It was the wrong product. I just didn't love anything that was there. It was like, it was junk, and I didn't feel that, I didn't love it. I think if I'd have started in a sales role earlier and did something that I really either used myself or saw the benefit for or could sell with conviction, I think I often hear that on my show. A lot of people, especially guys in the US, they start in sales and they make a really good return and then start their businesses. I wish I'd kind of found sort of sales roles. They weren't there, obviously. I just wasn't really looking at the time. So I wish I'd started earlier. I wish I'd started my endeavors earlier. But saying that, starting a business in your 40s, you have a great deal more wealth of experience that you can tap into and rely on that you don't have in your early 20s.
Yeah, definitely. And when I started, I was 27, and I look back and I genuinely didn't know anything, like compared to what I know now. Like, you know, just everything from sales to finance to marketing. I was so naive. And it was, sometimes I think it's the naivety of youth, is you're better off starting before you know everything, but also you're better off starting when you know everything. There's no perfect way to succeed, but both ways work.
I think there's got to be someone in your life that is entrepreneurial if you're going to be entrepreneurial. So all the people in my sort of family side, they had jobs, they did well, but then none of them started their own businesses. And it wasn't until I had started this mentor and this personal development journey of entrepreneurship, business owners, mindset, and all these sorts of things, that it became a relevant and sort of important thing that I decided to take the leap on. So I kind of think that you need a North Star. You need a shining light that you look up to and you go, actually, what they've done is amazing. I'd like to do it my way, but what they've done is amazing. And I think that that's something that I want to achieve, I want to do. So I do think you need to have someone in your life that is entrepreneurial. And we've all got mates. Property's the worst. We've all got mates in the pub that go, oh yeah, you know what? You should buy this. You should buy that. You should do that. And the question I learned very quickly is, so which one do you do? Oh no, I don't do any of them. I've got my house and I've got a really good job. And you're like, well, how do you know what property strategy I should be doing if you've only ever bought one house in your life and you live in it? So I think you do have to be careful with the sort of people's advice when they've got no grounding, no foundations on those areas. Because we've all got people like that spout off and tell you that you should be doing this and you should be doing that when they've got no experience in doing that. So, but back to the point, I do think you need a North Star to shine that light on entrepreneurship. And I didn't have that in my early 20s.
Just wanted to dial back to your mentor that you had while you were at, was it PwC?
PwC.
Yeah. So obviously that's something that, isn't the normal thing to do when you're in a corporate role, to have a mentor that is, was it outside of PwC? Sorry, or was
it was outside, and it is very unusual. There were people in PwC. The first person, Ali, she gave me an opportunity and sort of said, I'm going to back you to move into consultancy. So she helped me and moving over. And then I had another person inside PwC, Andy, who was really, really supportive, encouraging, sort of helped me navigate the complexities of a large corporate. But yeah, a friend of mine said, you should speak to this guy, Louis. And I was like, oh, well, I don't know. He's like, no, honestly, he's amazing. So we spent some time together, had a few sessions with him. And the interesting thing about mentors when you're still relatively young is what I had to learn, which took a year or so, or maybe like 6 months or something. When you have someone that has that wealth of knowledge, you can't parrot, you can't repeat what he says. That doesn't, for Louis anyway. Louis is a wonderful guy. He goes rogue all the time. He's very independently thinking, and I absolutely love him for that. But I had to work out that what the advice he was giving me, how he was sort of guiding me, I had to then rebrand that into myself, or the authenticity of myself. And I think that's super important with content as well. When you're starting to create content for social media, for YouTube, for podcasts, there can be people that you aspire to and you absolutely love, but you have to be able to bring your own personality, your own authenticity into doing that. So it took me a while. It took me a little while to work out, okay, the advice is great. Yeah, no one else that I knew had an outside the corporate mentor. No one. And that was how I was able to accelerate the promotions by having him in my life, guiding me, shaping me, building my confidence that I could do those things to be successful.
Do you have a mentor now?
Well, I still stay in contact with Louis. We don't meet every week or every other week, which is what I was doing at PwC. But he's definitely still a massive part of my life. I will, when I'm struggling with something, I'll drop him a call, or we'll meet up, we'll have a coffee, and we'll sort of just think about strategy, like blue sky thinking. Where are the businesses going? What do we need to think about? My business partner, George, he's been an entrepreneur for 26, 27 years. He's a great wealth of knowledge. I really lucked out having him part of my life. I feel very, very blessed to have him part of my life. I've got a guy that helps me with sales and marketing that I have sort of check-ins with him, maybe every sort of quarter. So there's nothing formal in the sense of that I'm meeting someone maybe every week or every other week at the moment. I'm not saying I will never do that. It definitely might be something that I need or want at a later stage. But just having people in my life that I can sort of have checkpoints with and just make sure that I'm personally moving in the right direction, I think is incredibly valuable. And that should be something that every entrepreneur should have: a mentor, a coach, a sounding board, someone just to give you a different perspective. Because in running businesses, you're in a lot of the cases, the smaller businesses, you're in the business. Now, what is the greatest value as being a co-founder or owner is being able to zoom out and see the whole landscape of the industry and understand where things are moving, what you need to think about. And that's something I try and do personally every week, basically, just thinking about maybe different revenue streams, different ways to adapt the business, different things that will support us to make us better. So I think that we should all be looking for people to give an outside opinion, a different view of you or yourself or your business or where you're moving towards.
Yeah, I mean, it's great advice. It's something that I've looked into many times, and I've just never took the plunge. I always have a network of people that I can call on, but I don't have a regular weekly, monthly, meeting. And it's something that as the years go by.
So I did an interview, I think it was yesterday or day before, and this guy said to me that he's had 3 coaches, mentors, and one was about sales and marketing. One was about operations and building a business. And the third one was a more personal development, life coach, sort of mindset person. And I think that's really good advice. Sales and marketing, so crucial for every business. You don't have a business if you don't get sales. So you need to understand that, or even hire the best people that you can get. The whole advent of growing a business, you need to have that mentality, because you need to make profit. First of all, you need to grow every year on year. I struggle a little bit with the life coaches, just me personally. I find it a little bit woo-woo, and I don't really buy into it. But as I say, I know a lot of people that have had a lot of help in all sorts of things, like sleep, as well as mindset, as well as meditation, as well as journaling, and they need that sort of support to. I personally don't really feel like I need that sort of support, but I know lots of people that have got lots of benefit. Stress management, anxiety management, and that sort of like life coaching aspect is important, and I think that's what some people need. But having those 3 aspects of a business, sales and marketing, growth, as well as personality, attitude, mindset, I think is so important, and we should all be thinking about, even if we don't action, but thinking about how we can improve in those 3 areas.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it's something that I need to work on over the next kind of 6 months to kind of build that network to kind of cope with a few of those things as well. I wanted to go forward to the starting of the podcast introduction group. So when you started, what was the hardest thing that you experienced?
It's a good question. Both me and George are pretty good at sales. We can convert. And I think the marketing side was our biggest hurdle, because the one thing that's quite hard about our business is it's the killer question is, do you like podcasts? And I say that because unless you listen to podcasts and see the value of being a podcast guest, there's no point in talking to us. So when we were doing early marketing, we did email outreach, we did LinkedIn outreach, we did lots of different experimentations on finding our clients, and that was the biggest struggle. Was the LinkedIn outreach. I hate it. I genuinely hate it when people that have had no interaction with you connect with you and immediately pitch to you something in your DMs. So I was really not keen on doing it, but we discussed it and we said, okay, let's try it for a while. So and we've actually come to the grounding of Google Ads, which has been amazing for us, a really, really valuable marketing tool. So I think for us, it was always that struggle of making sure that we got leads, because once we got good, solid leads, the sales was okay. We've always been able to convert leads into sales. It was just getting quality leads. We might get leads, but if they're not the right fit, then it's incredibly difficult. So I think for it's been a struggle early doors, especially getting quality leads in there that actually were interested in hearing about our service.
Yeah, and I can imagine that people, they want to, grow their brand, but they don't want to do podcasting, but they are told or recommended to come to you. And if they're not going to be into the actual thing they're doing, it's going to be hard to, show the enthusiasm through that medium.
Yeah, we've got the enthusiasm. It's been able to and I don't mind an obstacle in the way if it's a price point or a commitment point. We can be as flexible as we can, but it's just like you can't unless they see the value. There was a lot of curiosity, and all that sounds quite interesting. Let's hear more about it. And so that's why Google Ads is really good for us. Is there's an intention to look for podcasting or podcast guesting. Facebook ads, we talked about this for a long time, is interrupting people when they're scrolling. It's going, hey, look at me. You never thought about what you want, my service ever in your life, but I'm going to pitch to you, and people just scroll on. And so we've never really done. Now LinkedIn for me is really powerful because I contribute to LinkedIn about entrepreneurship, about podcasting, about podcast guesting. I'm very active on LinkedIn. It's my main portal. I still get referrals, people seeing my content and saying, let's have a conversation, and we can often convert them as well. But yeah, that the whole marketing piece and generating quality leads, because we could get leads, but unless you've got them pre-qualified or know that they are going to be interested in the service, then it's kind of a very difficult. And you kind of reflect on it yourself, like, am I doing something wrong in the sales call? Am I doing something wrong in the converting, the convincing, the persuading? But actually we weren't. We just weren't getting the right people on calls.
Interesting. I wanted to talk about the guesting side of things. So how do you match a guest to a podcast?
So we've got a directory which we can outreach to any podcast globally. I say this on my on the onboarding call with our clients is, if Elon Musk came to us and said, I want to be on shows, we could get him on Joe Rogan. So we have this directory where we can outreach to any shows. After we close, I have an hour with all of our clients, and in that hour, it's a mixture of telling them what they need to do, things like equipment and storytelling and being an expert, as well as just build it a little bit of coaching as well, depends on their experience. And so that hour is incredibly important to help people get in the right space and be in the right headspace to be able to do that. So for us, it's really just helping our clients and making sure that they're ready for when they start.
Someone like Joe Rogan's, do you have to pay Joe Rogan show, for example, to get someone on there?
So probably 95% of shows don't charge to be on their show. And therefore, even some of the bigger shows, they don't put fees on there. But there are some shows that insist on having a fee attached. And it's actually sometimes surprising, the shows that actually require fees. I won't name names, but there was a health show that we were trying to pitch to someone, and they asked for a lot of money. And when I did analysis with my team about what their demographics were, what their number of downloads were, they were nothing staggering. They were nothing that impressive, but they were charging a substantial fee. We're talking like $1,700, which is a lot of money for a show. So yeah, in most cases we don't get charged. The podcaster gets the benefit of having really great guests, and as a podcaster, that's always something that you're looking for, to get quality guests. But yeah, we offer it to our clients, and we give them the sort of data why this might be important to them to be on that show for a couple of $100. But we never force our clients into paid shows. And I think for us, that makes a lot of sense to us. If they see the value in paying for that show because they get X, Y, and Z, they get a lot of promotion, they get exposure, they get to different audiences, it can be beneficial. But I cautiously say we don't encourage it, but we just are mindful that if there is a charge fee, then we just make sure that we give them all of the information they need to make that qualified decision whether they want to pay to be on the show.
Yeah, no, it's something that I always think about with certain, especially the bigger shows when they have huge guests coming on, whether or not there has been a transaction, but often they're looking.
You know what? The reality is, if you want to be on a really big show and you're not famous. So Joe, I don't know if Joe charges. We've never actually asked him for any of our clients. But if Joe has someone famous, an actor, an athlete, or whatever, he won't charge them. If he has someone that doesn't necessarily have the standing but has an interesting story or an interesting angle on something, Joe can go into many different areas. I think they might charge some of their guests. I think they would say, well, do you know what? You're pretty much a no one, but we like the angle that you've got on this. We think we should charge you something for that. So I don't think that with podcasts there's necessarily a hard and fast rule with all of their guests, but I think some of them do, and I think some of them do that just to sort of make them feel like they're bigger than they maybe are. It's a tricky one.
Yeah. I want us to move on to your show, Mark. So you said earlier that Business Growth Talk has been running now for 6 and a bit years.
Yeah.
So how did you start podcasting, and how has it changed you over that period?
So I was working in PwC, and I started doing talks and more presentations to industry, to larger audiences. And I'd finish work at 7 p.m. and then I'd spend another 2 hours prepping for the talk. And it might be just a 20-minute talk. It might, like a couple of examples, I was doing it with other people. And I really agonized over every single word that I was using. And so I thought, well, what can I do to, very cliche thing, but find my voice? What way can I get better at communicating with people? So I started a podcast. I had no intention anyone really listening to it. There was no I was going to be on a top show. It was going to be a top show. It was me researching for half an hour, doing a 15-minute solo episode. And the early stuff, the real early stuff, like the first 50, first 100 were me just talking about a growth mindset, things that I listened to on an audiobook, my take on it. 80-20 principle. I love the 80-20 principle as well. And it just was me being able to think about something and then communicate it on a microphone. And the game changer was when a friend of mine said, like, have you thought about doing interviews? I said, no. He said, well, why don't you come to my house? So I went on a Saturday afternoon and we recorded a show and I really enjoyed it. And then I thought, well, how do I do more of this? So over the years, I don't know how many people I've interviewed, probably over 200 people, I would guess, in 500 episodes. It's a rough guess. And it's just grown. And it was called Absolute Business Mindset for years and years and years. And it was a journey show. The interviews were all about, I did this, this, and this. This is my current business. Isn't it great? Tell me about it. And last year, I'm part of a mastermind, a podcast mastermind. A lot of people way ahead of me with downloads, experience, knowledge. And they kept on saying to me, you're too generic. That story-based journey show, you're not going to get growth that you deserve. So last year, I changed it to something called Business Growth Talks, which is all about growing and scaling businesses. Again, it doesn't matter what industry you're in. I've had digital marketers, I've had finance, tech guys, YouTubers, I've had across the board. But it's all about how they have grown and scaled a business. And that niche for me is incredibly important because it's an interesting avenue. It's the third stage of business. So you've got like the thought process, the starting point, then you've got a startup, then you've got growth phase. Once you've got some employees and you've got income, how you reinvest it into marketing, how you get sales. And then you've got, I'm not sure, stage 4, and then stage 5 is like a large enterprise sort of business. So I decided to just target on that stage 3 of the growth stage. And it's been great. I really love that whole idea of business. It was always a business show. And it's just been really, really enjoyable. And I'm seeing that on growth on YouTube and on the podcast because I'm starting to be known for the growth part of business. When people are looking for growth podcasts, they are coming to me or on YouTube. YouTube has been doing incredibly well as well for me. It's been absolutely bonkers, the growth that I've had in the last 6 months on YouTube, and it looks like it's going to be sustainable. So
what sort of numbers were you doing just roughly a year ago before you changed the show to what you're doing now? What does that look like?
So the podcast, I'm about 8,000 to 10,000 downloads a month that I get on my show. On YouTube, God, I'm not joking. 6 months ago, I had about 89 subscribers. I'm nearly 10,000 subscribers in 6 months. Getting 35,000 listens on YouTube Music. So the podcast on YouTube, and probably views on the videos and shorts. Shorts have been important for me as well. We're talking 45,000 views on YouTube as well. And subscribers have grown, as I said, like 89 to nearly 10,000 in 6 months. And that's curating content specifically for YouTube, using it as not just a second thought, I'll just chuck it up on YouTube, but actually the sort of liking and subscribing and commenting. It's also cliche, but it's important. It's important to the show to be able to grow on YouTube. So curating content that is edited just for the YouTube channel has been massively impactful for me. And so, it's a massive growth. I'm definitely looking to keep growing that like really, really pushing that YouTube growth. And hopefully, touch wood, both the podcast and the YouTube channel will continue to grow in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think I came across you because you were putting on a show, which is for your 500th episode. I think I saw you on LinkedIn, and I started listening to a couple of your podcasts. So I've done probably about 10 now. I think I change it up with all sorts of different podcasts as well. But I wanted to ask you about the live show. So first of all, what inspired you to do a live show, and two, what was, did you enjoy it, and what was the outcome?
Well, pure stupidity is obviously the answer to why I did it. So December last year, I was talking to a guy. We had a one-to-one, and he just floated this idea of doing a live show, and he organises events as well. And he was like, "Look, but why don't you do something special?" So I thought about it over Christmas, and then decided I was going to do it. It evolved into the 500th episode because it was coming up, and I thought it'd be a nice sort of celebratory moment. And so mainly myself organising it. I did have some critical, superb people that supported me, helped me, coached me, like the day's activities. But a lot of the organisation and the decision making was by myself. So it completely consumed my life. Absolutely 100% consumed my life for sort of 5 months. But I did it about 3 weeks ago. Monday is the release of the first episode of the live show. So we're just working at the moment on getting the video and the audio perfect for Monday. But yeah, it was more of a light version of the show. It's an entertainment. It was not just about growing businesses. It was a little bit more about mindset and how they develop as a person, and sort of, yes, it was based around business, but there was a lot more around it. We had a band who came and played as an intro. I actually had a magician, but unfortunately he had to pull out at the last minute with his wife being injured, hurt, and in A&E. So we had 3 guests that I interviewed, and one sort of TED Talk guy talking about AI. And it was incredibly stressful, but incredibly rewarding as well. And doing that in front of a live audience was, really stressful. But someone said to me afterwards, literally 2 minutes after I finished, he said, "Don't answer now. Think about it over the weekend. But you've learned so much through this experience. Would you do it again?" And you know what? I probably will. I enjoyed it. I got a little bit of a buzz from it. It was, as I said, it was rewarding as well as stressful, and therefore don't discount another live show at some stage. Not this year, definitely not this year, but maybe there might be something next year.
Excellent. Well, we'll look out for that. Because I was actually going to try and attend. I think I popped you a message on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
because I was in London, but I thought it was in London for that night, but I was actually in London on the Thursday, and your event was on the Friday, I believe. So yeah, obviously we'll look out for it. And if you do another show, pop us a message, and I'll come along.
Will do. Brilliant.
We've got 3 final questions, just quick fire, Mark.
Yep.
First one was, if you weren't an entrepreneur, what career path would you be?
So what I wanted to be was an athlete. So I played rugby in my teenage years, and I played cricket in my teenage years and into my 20s. I would have loved to have played either rugby or cricket for professionally. That's what I would have wanted to. I had a bit of a difficult injury at 17 years old, and it kind of like scuppered the plans. But yeah, I would have loved to have been a professional athlete. And like outside of Dreamville, I probably would have gone into corporate. I probably would have stayed there, and I'd probably be quietly hating myself in a certain essence of myself. So, but yeah, professional athlete was what I really always wanted to do.
What advice would you give to someone starting a business in 2024?
Research the area that you're in. Research the market. What are other people doing? What are their services? What are their products? What are their revenue streams? What are they charging? Without doing that, you don't know what you should be charging for your clients. Whether it's a service like we do or whether it's a product, you need to, before you start going into a business, which is hard, rewarding, but there's challenges, that before you start, you should make sure you understand the landscape or the area, the industry, the sector, however you want to describe it, that you're going into, because unless you know that, then you won't be able to be successful. And also what we talked about earlier on is that whole idea of a runway, having some sort of safety net for you, I think is important as well.
Definitely, that's great advice. Final question, Matt. What podcasts or books have you read recently that you would recommend to someone that's either running a business or looking to start one?
Right. So the person who inspired me to do podcasts was Tim Ferriss. So the Tim Ferriss Show. I don't listen to his show that much these days, but he's still he's the OG. He's an absolute legend when it comes to podcasting. There's lots of shows. There's a friend of mine who does Wealth Builders. That's a really great show. That's about growing and creating wealth. At the moment, I'm enjoying The Rest Is Politics with the election coming up with the two
Rory Stewart, is it?
Rory Stewart and Alistair McCampbell. That's a good one. Books wise, and I've just started it. The new Gary Vee book about social media and how to do that. There's a book I'm really enjoying that, and sort of taking notes and sort of understanding that. I think, especially because I'm quite active on social media, I need to work out better ways of being able to. I think it's called day trading or something like that. But yeah, I love Seth Godin as a marketeer. I think every book that he's written that I've listened to or read, it's been absolute knowledge bombs dropped all the time. But yeah, there's lots of things out there, and I would challenge people to, as an entrepreneur starting a business, listen to books or podcasts about marketing and sales, but listen to them about growth of businesses. Listen to them about starting businesses, even in different industries, because you can always learn something from another industry. I think as an entrepreneur, you have to an extent, go through that sort of self-discovery, self-development, personal development journey to really be able to work out what your values are when it comes to business. What's your inspiration? What do you need personally from that business, as well as financially? So yeah, just go out there, find books, find podcasts that are talking about business, entrepreneurship, sales, marketing, tech, operations, finance. Just immerse yourself, and I'm sure you'll get there. The killer point is, though, about all of this, about knowledge, collecting knowledge, is you then have to action. You have to execute. There's no point in reading 100 books and then not executing on any of those points. So if it is note-taking, if it's giving just sort of voice memos to yourself about something that you've listened to or heard or read, that's the really important way of really being able to build success for entrepreneurship, is listen, but make sure you execute afterwards.
I think it's really fantastic advice. It's been a great interview, Mark. Learned lots. Definitely could have done probably another hour, I think, but we'll have to maybe come back to that a bit later. For those who've listened to the show and want to find out a bit more about you, could you tell us where they can find you and more about your business and your podcast as well?
Yeah, so very active on LinkedIn. It's Mark Hayward, MAR and HAYWARD. By all means, connect with me and DM me on LinkedIn. You can equally go to our website, which is podcastintroduction.com. You can go in and set up a call. If you put in the notes that you've heard me on a podcast or on this podcast, I will arrange to personally take that call with you. So just put in the note that you saw it on what show it was on or something like that. Instead of you speaking to my team, I'll take that call with you. So yeah, the website or LinkedIn is probably the best places to find me.
Lovely. Well, thanks so much for coming on today, Mark.
Pleasure. Thank you, Daniel. It's been really, really great. I had a lot of fun talking to you.
Likewise. Well, that was another episode of We Built This Business, and we'll be back next Tuesday.